with the family, because it would be hard for me not to talk about family, being a family therapist. So, but helping, because the model, the theory that I used for my dissertation was developmental ecological theory. The only study that has it, because I had to weave that in there on my own, but just understanding that families are in nested context. So it's the family, so it's the individual within the family, it's the family within the community, it's the community within the society. So you're looking at all these nested contexts and trying to get a full understanding of how youth are impacted on multiple levels. Structural inequalities, particularly for low income African American families, even middle and upper middle class when it comes to race, but understanding the racial piece around oppression, racism, and how it affects laws and policies as well. Because you know, there's a lot of people who are in positions of power are typically white, middle class, heterosexual males. So those things can also serve as very oppressive systems as well. Also, a very important piece, parents, including my own, don't acknowledge the trauma that these kids witness when they see them fighting. They think, oh, it's not that serious, not that big of a deal. Like my daddy said, oh, it wasn't that serious, but it was that serious, you know? So it's just, by them just acknowledging that will make a big difference, because a lot of the participants, their parents never said, oh, you want to talk about, even as adults, because, you know, most of their parents are no longer in these relationships, but they still never had the conversation. And so I feel like as a family, that would be an important piece. Also, just to be real and honest, some people stay together. So what do we do with that? We can't say, oh, I'm not going to see you. Now, there's several precautions that have to be put in place, and it's very difficult. But it's to say, oh, I can't see you because y'all still together. That's not okay. So it's just needing to understand, and parents need to understand that the impact on their child, and also giving them alternative ways to handle conflict. If y'all gonna stay together, y'all gonna have to do something. You can't keep going like this, because you're damaging each other, you're damaging your children. It's a whole bunch of things going on at once. So mental health programs needs to address the dimensions of race and class. And intervention strategies must incorporate all those things. Like I said, a lot of interventions that are out there are primarily researched on white, middle class populations that are not applicable to low income African American families. And when I found research which was crazy me, they would compare white middle class kids to low income black kids. Like, why not comparing the same class? Why are you doing that? You're perpetuating a stigma. Also, like I said, consider how race and class act as oppressive systems to these families, and understanding those things. And it's from racial awareness to racial sensitivity, two different things. Racial awareness is like this cultural competency thing. We realize that race and class, kind of their realities are shaped by race and class, and it's in equitable and unjust ways. But racial sensitivity is challenging that stuff, speaking out against it, is doing something about it. We know they're impacted, but what's the next step? What are we gonna actually do? That's the action part. Challenging it, speaking up, even when it may be uncomfortable.
Speaking on this race issue, I heard you say you're from the north.
Yes.
Well, I'm from the south, and you grew up under the real race, and it does have an effect. But in my generation, there were the church and the black families knew that all of us were going to be attacked, so they worked together. In this generation, they are more divided now among the younger generation. So, and I saw one word you had about the spirit part. What part does from you that the spirit plays a role in us coming together to heal the family?
And that's the thing with the church, because I have a whole lecture now on the side about the church and their role when it comes to violence in the family. It's not really addressed. No. They don't have the education. I mean, they don't have the education to train and help clergy kind of heal the family, because the black church is the first place majority of black people go, black families, and that's their escape, that's their release. Like, the spirit piece. And you know, one of the participants in the study actually said, they need to join together with mental health clinicians and educators to create programs to help these families, because the church is kind of is a brush over. They don't do.
Well, the church perpetuates patriarchy,
Yes,
the Abrahamic
absolutely.
religions.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, it's very difficult to get out from under that in the church.
It is.
And that's what the church has to acknowledge.
And until they do, it's gonna continue. Women and the children, you know, some of the kids, the adults in my study, they were saying how their concept of God, they believed in God, but they couldn't understand, like, why is this happening to us? You know what I mean? So, and not all of them, one of them mentioned the church and saying how he, you know, looked to his pastor, and it felt it would be helpful if the pastors would talk about domestic violence, because people would be more apt to listen to them. So those are things I feel like the church is a whole other, it's a lot of research out there on the black church, and I think you make a great point about patriarchy in the church is being perpetuated. That perpetuates the whole patriarchy thing, because it's hidden, it's invisible. So by default, they're invisible, and their voices are not heard. So advocacy and intimate partner violence coalition programs, having those, it's not a lot of, even out here, there's a few that have programs for families, but it's not an actual mental health clinic devoted to these families. They have shelters, they have nonprofit organizations that stand up and speak out against it, which is very needed, but I think about the healing. You know, it's not a lot of space for that. It's more crisis mode. Oh, fix it right now. But it's all this stuff that comes as a result of it. Also, assessing violence across different systems. Like I said, it's the home, it's the community. Sometimes it's the schools, because they have studies on school violence and how it plays a role in community, and intimate partner violence as well in the home. So it's also understanding all these things. So we talked about the community piece, working with other community leaders, that includes the church. More psychoeducation about intimate partner violence in the schools. Some participants felt would be helpful, because they didn't really have a clear understanding as to how it worked. Because a lot of them, like I said, majority of them ended up in violent relationships themselves, even the women who were perpetrators. But the point is, they didn't have education on it. And so this, once again, the education of parents, educators, law enforcement officials, health, mental health professionals, regarding the effects of children witnessing violence, and alternative approaches to resolving conflict. So if everybody's on the same page, we can make a great impact, because it is a systemic issue. So it's kind of hard to fight against a systemic issue by yourself. It takes community leaders all kind of joining together to fight against the cause. So once again, the screening piece, really important. Assess, ask questions, see if there is anything going on in the home. I just think of bullies. Typically, they got a lot going on when that happens. Doesn't make it right, but it's just still trying to understand what's going on for them. Oh, okay. That's it.